Whether you're a suburban athlete or an Olympic champion, you've got to work hard to get results. We've put over 15 years' experience into developing Active Man, combining vitamins, minerals and proteins. Active Man helps provide you with the nutrients you need to optimize performance and assist recovery. Discover the Active Man range, now available. Active Man, power up.
Welcome to this week's Power Progress podcast, and this week I have an amazing guest speaker, Josh Blue. He's a fitness model, he's also a judge, and lots of other stuff, but obviously if you want to go into detail, all the little sort of areas you cover, mate. But first of all, how you doing, mate? You good?
I'm good, thank you. Appreciate me having on, Nathan. Thank you for your time.
No worries at all. We were kind of having a chat just before we went live, and we thought it'd be a good place to start about, obviously there's a lot of information out there about lifting weights and resistant training and getting bigger. But you kind of just said, actually, Nath, I think it sometimes just goes back to the basics, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like Nath just said, was just chatting before this saying there's social media saturated with fitness models, muscle models, YouTubers, Instagram fitness people. And it's just, like you say, there is so much information out there, and especially to new people as well, that are like new into the industry, and where do they go for the information? And they're obviously going to reach social media, but it's sometimes that saturated that there's so many different complicated workouts, and this is how you should train, this is how you should do this is how you do that. But I just think, like you said, go back to the basics. Will always be there. The basics will never fail you.
Yeah, I mean, myself, who's more of a lifestyle coach, you're a mixture of both. You kind of prep people to go on stage and you do lifestyle. So someone who's just, I don't know, just coming to the gym floor, what sort of basic exercises would you start them with?
If someone's just come onto the gym floor, they're literally just starting at the gym, I would literally just go through some of just basically the main compound lifts. You know, I would get someone to learn how to do a dead, learn how to do a squat, a bench, maybe a pull up, a bent over row, dumbbell presses, all these kind of really simple movements that you could literally never rotate out of a training plan if you didn't want to. Obviously you can move to machines and things like that, but I think once you nail those basic key movements on how to move your body, how to get that mind muscle connection, they're all the things that I would sort of focus on first. I wouldn't even worry necessarily about set and rep ranges too much. I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about a split to begin with. I'll just just get the basic key movements nailed and learn how to move your body, because everybody's different. I would suggest to the new person in the gym, you know, you've got to pick up the weights. You've got to know what it feels like. Your form isn't going to be perfect straight away. You're going to make mistakes. And whether you've got a coach or a trainer or not, the mistakes are still going to be made. So I would definitely just start with some of the real basic. It might seem dead boring because it's not all the cool stuff that you see on Instagram straight away and all these newfangled movements. You know, oh, that looks amazing, I want to try that. I'm just spend a couple of years learning the simple stuff, and it'll just carry you so much more forward.
Yeah, because you can see this a lot where you get someone who would perceive themselves to be very experienced going to the gym. And I've been there before where they've had a rest, and you know, I'm talking on a lifestyle coach point of view, and they've been busy, and I've come back in and they've said they're super experienced, and then I've got them on the bench press, and I could see not only is the range of movement not there, but they haven't even got any connection of what muscle it's hitting. It's actually the shoulder. So obviously, like you said, if you go back to that connection of you want to feel it here. So on the way up, you're squeezing that muscle if you need to contract it. So these are all the things which are super important when it goes back to basics, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. It's what I talk with a lot about my clients and on my social media stuff. I think that mind muscle connection is so important, if not probably one of the most important things you can do in training. Because I always try and preach that it's not about, you know, it's not just about moving the weight from A to B. It's about how you move the weight from A to B. And when you get that mind muscle connection on point, that's where you can really maximize on results, I believe.
Yeah, I think the other factor is giving them that education that obviously every muscle needs to be balanced out. So if you're going to hit your chest, you're going to need to hit your back muscles. And you see that so much where you get the mirror muscle guys who come in, and you obviously can see their shoulders are really forward and they're quite developed, but you can see they're probably not lifting the weight right. And also they're sacrificing their posture. Do you come across a lot of them type of people in the gym?
Yeah, you see him from time to time in the gym, don't you? Just your typical. I'd say I'll be honest because like I've been there when I first started in the gym. I didn't even train legs for like 3 years. I just did like chest and arms, bit of shoulders. Didn't really do back because you couldn't see it. It was just one of those. I just did stuff for like really superficial reasons, and it took me years to correct that. I had to like I remember when my legs were really, really lacking compared to my upper body. So I had to train legs 3 days a week for like 18 months to bring them up, which was, I'll say to anyone, don't do that because it is like proper hard graft. It's horrid.
Yeah,
So
a
yeah,
lot.
just balance it all out, man.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people have fell into that, particularly ones who eventually, if they do go to that level of getting on stage, I think most of us can relate that it's kind of partly superficial why we do that, but also it's about what we think is right to do. Because it's like you just see people do that and you kind of go, oh, that's what we should be doing. It's only when you have your eyes open and you realize actually it is about balancing their muscles and you can get stronger from that, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, like it's what you see people do. So I would have gone in the gym when I first started and just saw guys in there with big arms and big chests, and I was like, that looks pretty sick. I want to do that. I want to get bigger. It's the only reason I started going to the gym. I was always small and skinny. So that's what I started to do. But
Yeah.
obviously looking back, and now I know what I know, it's great because I can sort of pass this forward and say to people, invest in a PT, invest in a coach, or just invest in speaking to someone who knows what they're doing, has been there and made the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, likes of us who are coaches, we get coached by others, and it goes back to I think it was around for me, it was around about 2011. I started having chiropractor treatments, and
Mm.
he checked my posture and he said your anterior deltoids are far too developed, and other areas. But at the same time, I found this coach in London called Dax Moy at the time his name was, and it was all about patterns of movement. Anyway, when I went to him and done the course and got educated, I realised I had to go back to square one. So what I done, a bit like what you did with your legs, you spent 18 months on your legs. I spent 18 months working on my back muscles, my posterior, and
Mm.
completely left out the chest. And what's interesting, when I brought back the anterior muscles, they were stronger anyway, because
Yeah.
obviously I've worked the opposite muscles, which obviously assist. So that was a real breakthrough for me to do that. And when I went back to the chiropractor and had that assessment months later, it obviously went up right. So
That's
it's
wicked.
so important.
It's great because, like you say, being a coach yourself, you can now pay that forward,
Yeah.
which is so valuable to obviously your clients because you've been there and you made the mistake, which is great. Which is why I always say to people, like when you get in a gym, if you want to take it seriously, if you do really want to progress your physique, then you will make mistakes, but you can cut out the big ones by investing in a coach. I'll definitely advise that to anybody.
With the lower body stuff, so I'll get this quite common with, say, office workers when I see them doing a squat.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever experienced someone who they can't quite get that squat as low down or not quite right due to obviously their pattern of movement? You've had to take them away and sort of coach them how they can at least do the right posture with a squat.
I have, yeah. Do you know what as well? A lot of the time, depending on what the person's training for. So if someone really does want to get into the gym, they really want to learn how to squat, or they're going to go into, I don't know, some form of competition where they may need a squat or anything like that, then I would absolutely make sure that they, go away, work on the posture. I would recommend things like chiropractors and things like that just to align the posture because I'll be honest, I'm obviously not qualified to do that. I can teach them how to squat properly. But I think you've also got to recognize that not everyone's built the same. So some people, the way that their physique is actually built structurally, they won't always be able to get the same depth as somebody else, the way their like hip hinges moved and stuff like that. So if I do come across people like that, if they're just training purely for aesthetic and fitness purposes,
Yeah.
sometimes I would actually go, do you know what? We're just not even going to squat. We'll just get you on the hack squat maybe because you can get the depth because your back is much more safer. It's much more aligned on the machine, or get you on a leg press and things like that. So I think it's great to learn how to do these movements, but depending on what the person's training for, like me, for example, I haven't actually done a barbell back squat in my workouts in probably about 3 years, maybe even 3.5 years. Because I train for aesthetic purposes for bodybuilding. All I want to do is to get my legs a lot stronger. I want them to grow. and get more density and definition. And I can actually just get that through machines now without compromising any form, any injuries. So yeah, depending on the person, if they need to learn how to do a squat for postural purposes, then brilliant. Let's get them doing that and get it right. But I think there are some cases where you can actually take them away for the movement and, you know, just rotate something else in if they're training purely for aesthetics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you touched on that. The main important factor is what is their goal. So I like
Yeah,
that you said that, because not everyone needs to do a full squat with a back squat. They don't
yeah,
need. They just want to get the result and make sure they're going to be safe doing it. So if they find that's really hard, or the depth isn't there, or it's compromising their lower back, so they're going to get more back pain, all you do is find a machine which is actually going to give them a bit more stability. A hack squat is a prime example you used, maybe a leg press. So that's super important that you've highlighted that, because again, I've seen coaches in the past, not saying they were wrong doing it, but they spent far too long giving someone this technique, which they're not really going to benefit from long term. And if they end up not getting it anyway, you run the risk of them actually being put off by training because they think it's then boring or it's not going to achieve anything. So I really like that, what you touched on about the goals and what they're trying to achieve.
that's wicked. Do you know what? It's so good that you said that about being put off by it, because I was literally about to segue around to that, saying, I think like nearly 90% of training as well, it's got to be enjoyable.
Yeah,
You got to enjoy it, 'cause you got to keep it up. So when you said, you know, they might get put off by it, I think that's so true. Because if you're putting somebody through an exercise and, you know, after a good few weeks or months and they're like, just not feeling it, rather than actually just persisting and pushing through that, go, cool, let's find something you do like. Because then you're going to stay consistent with it. And that's where change occurs. That's where growth occurs. When you, I mean, you know, like consistency is key, right?
yeah,
And I think I found that with my training the most. Like someone said to me, if I wrote my training split down, you'd look at it and go, wow, that looks so boring, man. Like the rep range is so simple. The exercises haven't changed in like 2.5 years. I don't think I've changed my routine. But I've still managed to grow because the weights have progressed. I enjoy it more than anything. So when I go into the gym, I actually love every single session. I cannot wait to get on this exercise. I cannot wait to see if I can up the weights, up the reps. So rather than actually just changing the exercises all the time, I've just found what I really like doing, and that's enabled me to carry on throughout.
Mm. And again, when we talk about exercises you enjoy and a form of having fun, if you like, if you want to put it under that, I think most of the time, what makes people end up enjoying it is obviously you get the endorphins and all that stuff, but it's the fact that you can feel there's progress. I think there's a lot to be said that when you start feeling like it's benefiting you and you're progressing, there's a lot to do, links to actually making it enjoyable. And the more you do
Yeah,
it, the more your body craves it, I find as well.
yeah, massively. That's so important. Like seeing progress has got to be one of the biggest forms of motivation. Whether that's seeing progress in your lifts or seeing progress in your physique, and it's like, I mean, how good does it feel when people notice?
Yeah,
Like you see someone like, I don't know, maybe like 10 weeks later, and they're like, mate, you're looking big, or wow, you're looking shredded, like what you've been doing. Um, so that is so rewarding, and that's just going to spur you on even more. So yeah, you're so right in what you say. When you actually see physical changes, that's just like the number one form for motivation going forward.
yeah, yeah. And like I said, where mine are sort of busy people and they don't really focus on their self as such. When they're working, when they're doing their business stuff, they're focused on their business or they're focused at home with their family. When they're with me, they just want me to just have a bit of crap with them, make sure they're progressing on stuff, and that makes it enjoyable for that person. And if
Yeah,
they weren't progressing or if I made them feel, because it can do, if let's just say they weren't doing something quite up to scratch, and you kept working on it and working it too long, going back to obviously finding something that suits them, that can make them feel a little bit, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. And then that also was what will make them feel a bit down and they stop enjoying it. And then they feel like they're going backwards rather than forward. That then becomes a bit of a hindrance, like we kind of touched on. I guess the other thing what we can also touch on is let's go on towards the type of people you train going towards a show. Is there any of these who you've trained which obviously have just stuck with the basics, or has some of them actually evolved to something a bit more?
um, yeah, some have evolved to a bit more. I think depending on maybe the category they're going into, certain areas that we need to work on. So, we can start adding in when it gets to sort of towards the end of prep or even the middle of prep. You can start adding in like intensifiers, like cluster sets, drop sets, and things like that, and adding in certain movements which are going to target, just a little bit of a niche of a muscle rather than just the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's purely when you can see a physique progress and they're at like an advanced level. I think only then, when you're at that advanced level, that you can start adding in, tiny little movements to hit this certain part of the muscle, or maybe going on a cable just to do a single arm pull down rather than just a lat pull down, just to, and twisting the body a bit, getting the elbow deep in the pocket, really to hit the lower lat and things like that. And I think, yeah, when you get to a bit more of an advanced level, then that's when you want to start looking at things like that. Yeah. Because, I mean, you see it loads of times. I go in the gym and I see young lads in the gym and they might be sat on a chest press, and bless them, this was me like once upon a time, but they'd have like no muscle. They haven't really built anything yet. And they're sat on a chest press sideways and like squeezing it this way to like really hit the center of their chest rather than just pressing it forwards, because they've probably seen some huge bodybuilder on Instagram do it. And I'm like, people need to understand what they're doing now is not what got them to where they are. Yeah. Like a lot of the time they've done all the basics and they still do all the basics. They're probably just adding these in as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have had people which have just stuck to the basics and got the results, and then others, incorporated a few little different things. Like me, for example, for all of my shows, I've never really changed anything training wise ever. Everything's been dead simple. Like my leg session would consist of a hack squat, a leg press, an RDL, a leg curl, and extension, and some calves. That's it.
Yeah.
I never switch anything up, or I just make sure the intensity is there. I think that's the most important thing.
Would you still focus on your personal bests, or does that not normally come into it?
I don't necessarily, I've never have and never will keep a logbook of lifts. With a lot of my clients, the way that I coach is completely optional. You can record it if you want to, but I think sometimes, in my experience, I just find that there are too many external factors within your day that can affect your training. So if you trained at the exact same time every day, ate the exact same meal times every day, had the same sleep, your work life was the same, then you could really, really accurately keep a logbook, because the only thing that's changing is what's in the gym. But I think sometimes you may have had 2 hours less sleep, you would rush through your meal, or you missed the meal before training, or something happened at work which has got you down, or you're stressed. The gym session is probably not going to be as effective. So for them to look back at previous weeks and try and beat that lift that you did, if it doesn't happen, you can start beating yourself up about it. But I just think sometimes there's too many external factors which can affect that logbook for it to be 100% accurate. But saying that, on the other hand, it is a great tool of measure for people, because like you say, it's all about seeing progress. And if people love to see their lifts go up, providing the way that it's done is the same, because there's no good chucking more weight on if the form is completely compromised. So it's all well and good doing a squat at 150 kilos and then next week doing it 170, but if the depth isn't there, the tempo is not the same. In my experience, you've not beaten the lift. Yeah. So I'm kind of on the fence. I think if it works for you, then use it. Yeah. But for me, I just think enjoyment, intensity is key, because sometimes I'll go in the gym, I don't feel as strong, but my intensity might be way better. So I might go lighter for more reps. As long as I walk out of that gym knowing I've left nothing in the tank, then I'm happy.
Yeah. I'm totally with you, by the way, with the personal best. That's why I asked that question. And I actually had one of these conversations with someone the other day about it, because like you said, there's so much riding on it. But I think the most damaging, if you like, is the fact that if you go too much on personal bests, ego can kick in and you can lose the overall focus of why you're doing what you're doing. And you may compromise, it's human nature, by the way, that you're trying to lift this personal best, but at the cost of not getting your technique there, at the cost of beating yourself up that, you haven't done it that day. And you can start overthinking about it. What I've discovered when I see people have a little sheet and tick it down. However, like you said about personality types, the analytical people I've trained in the past like logging it down, and that's totally fine. But I do try to make sure that they understand. You got to understand that, you may not have that much sleep that day. Your eating may not be as on point. So just weigh up all these things and maybe look at it over time. That if you back over time, a bit like stocks and shares. It goes up and down, but overall you can see
Yeah,
it
yeah.
up. So I think that's the way you got to treat lifting and intensity and all that factors. Just look at it as a guide, but the reality is you're going to go like this, you know?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, perfect way. And like I say, I think a logbook is great, and logging it down if you're really honest with it. I
Yeah,
think that's the most important thing. If you're really honest with it, then it's awesome because, like you said, it's visual progress, and we know that it works. I mean, go back to, let's say, I'd say probably the most famous person is Dorian Yates with his logbook. He's got every single workout written down since he's ever started training. Even through all of his Olympia wins, he still has them written down on pieces of paper. And he was Mr. Olympia 6 times, so
yeah.
clearly works, and he clearly got results. So I think if you're honest with it, great tool. But like you said, yeah, be honest with it, and accept that it's not linear.
Yeah, definitely. I like, and when we talk about them smaller muscles, if you like, that you sort of target nearer the show, that's the sort of stuff which I do something similar where I do weaker muscle day, where if obviously my clients aren't prepping to go onto stage, so they wouldn't necessarily go down that route, but there happens to be someone who say would be a similar shape to me, and they're at the point where they do want to focus on specific parts. Like for me, I worked on for quite a while rear delts, for example, because I knew they were
Yeah, yeah,
weaker, and that's where I'd have like maybe like a couple of exercises at the end of my main workout where I'd focus on them points. And that certainly has helped. But like I said, I would always go back to them basics first. It's, other than legs, what you're saying about where you worked 18 months on, with you personally, was there any other weaker areas what you felt I needed to focus on?
yeah, definitely. I'd say back as well. Well, I'm going to list everything here really, but back, shoulders. But I'd always say my chest has sort of always grown at I say proportionate rate to everything else. But I'd say, yeah, legs definitely needed work. And then I ended up working on those quite a lot, but then I became bottom heavy
Mm.
because I trained them so much. So then I kind of had to balance out my top, which is where lockdown actually came in handy because I didn't have anything to do other than train. So I was like, okay, cool. This is a time where I'm literally going to spend time working on my back and my shoulders. So my back width has always never been great. So I've focused a lot more on, low elbow movements, a lot of like rows, pull downs. But yeah, always just keeping the elbows low and close to the body to really try and hit that lower lat to add that width. So going into bodybuilding, obviously you want that width and that V taper. So that's something I've really tried to work on. It's definitely improved over the years. But like anything, it's always just a never-ending story, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And just to sum it up, if someone was listening to you right now, is there any final, I'm putting you on the spot here, by the way, is there any
I love it.
final message what you want to give to that person who's listening?
I'll say if you're listening to this right now, and if you really, really want results, then you will do what it takes to get there. Like you will, if you really want them. And I say this to a lot of my clients as well. You know, some people can say, "Oh, I've been on plan this week, but on this day I had this," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. So you haven't been on plan." They're like, no, I have, but I had this. I'm like, "So you haven't been on plan." Like it doesn't matter, but it's all on you. So if you really want the results, you'll literally just do what it takes to get there, whether it's days, weeks, months, years. And I'd always, like you said, always just go back to the basics and take each day at a time. So if you have a bad day, if you mess up, if you go way over on your calories and you're trying to lose weight, do you know what? Just draw a line under it. Tomorrow's a new day. Just get back on plan and carry on.
Yeah,
Consistency is always key. And with regards to training as well, I try and drill this into people so much that I really feel like there's only like a 5% of people actually train hard enough for their goals.
yeah,
And I'll happily say this on here to all of my clients as well. I know a lot of the time, I do know they train really, really hard because I see them in person. But a lot of the time, I know they're not putting in 100%. I
mm,
just know that for a fact. Like when you're in the gym, I'm like, you're in there anyway. You're in there for that amount of time. So I'm like, just use that time. Like really, really use that time. If you're in there for an hour, you can go through the motions and tick the boxes and you can do your 4 sets of 10. But when you get to that eighth, ninth, and 10 rep, is it really a massive, massive struggle? Because if you really want results, you want that change, you want that growth, then those last few reps there where it's going to be, you're going to be failing, that's where it's going to happen. Like, don't be afraid to be in pain, man. Like, get comfortable in the uncomfortable. And that's where all the magic will happen.
Like it, mate. It's a good place to finish. And of course, if you sort of connected with Josh in any sort of way, I'll leave all the details. Connect with him on Instagram. He obviously does online as well as in person. So yeah, just give him a little shout out. It's been great to have you, mate. And
Legend, mate. Thank you. I really appreciate me on.
yeah, definitely, mate. Hopefully we'll have you back on in the future as well, bud.
Nice one. Have a sick day.
Cheers, bud.